And I thought I would show you some funny art. Not funny, but just I was thinking about perspective and about like what is perspective, and the word perspective actually comes from the Latin word perspectus, which is to to look or to look ahead, right? So this is a Japanese artist, and she's a fashion. She's kind of like a fashion slash fabric artist, and she decided to create work that was called urban camouflage. And she had some concerns about her safety in parts of Tokyo, and so she decided to create a line of clothing that would operate as urban camouflage. So if you felt like if you were being, followed or whatever, you could take your clothes like this. There she is. She's demonstrating so you could hide in plain sight. You could hide in plain sight as a vending machine. She's also designed backpacks for children. So if children are being followed, they can hide as an emergency fire. See, here he is here. And then he just changes it, and quick change-out, he looks like a fire extinguisher. There he is. And so the unassuming bad guy will, this is also a purse that looks like a manhole cover. So if you're walking down the street and somebody's trying to mug you, you turn a corner, you can throw your purse, unfurl it, throw it on the ground, and the unsuspecting bad guy will run by thinking it's just an everyday manhole cover. And then of course you can go back and get your purse later. So, all right. That was a little tidbit of art for you guys on Monday. Yeah, exactly, Jaylee. I know it's kind of out of the blue, but I thought it was kind of great. Just the idea that we could live in environments. Since we're going to be drawing environments, I thought, well, why not? What are some other ways people have kind of dealt with the environment? Pickle. Okay, so perspective. We've been more or less dealing with perspective as a system of let me give the bird some food so it'll stop. Please stand by, guys. Okay, I'm almost back. So hopefully that'll keep her quiet while I do this. Okay. Now, perspective is a way of drawing, or it's kind of an age-old challenge. And this is a picture, and one of the questions you guys can add in your answers in the chat. But I'm wondering, looking at this image, which way is the horse looking? Is he looking forward or is he looking away? And how do you know? Or you could just chime in and just kind of unmute and chime in. What do you guys think?
I think he's just looking behind.
Like he's turning his neck to look at someone behind him?
Yes.
Okay, Brian says he looks like he's looking at the sunset. Anybody else? Yeah, it looks like Reagan says, looks like he's looking away, right?
I'd say he's looking back at us.
Okay. Looking back at, so it's kind of, sounds like a little bit of a both and. All right, well, I'm not actually sure. So what do you guys see here? You may have to zoom back a little bit.
I just see damage.
Damage?
Yeah.
Cow, you see a cow, Jaylee? All right.
Say like a sheep, someone, I'm not sure.
A cow, right.
Hmm.
When I first saw this, it looked like an aerial map from a, you know how like high altitude aircraft will take an aerial map of an area to figure out like what's going on there. But yeah, it's a cow. This is Wang Jimeng. This is a different kind of perspective. And what I want to get at is in all our exercises here, this kind of perspective is called atmospheric perspective. And this was done in, well, you know, maybe 1100 or something. It says around 1096, but he did not live to be 100, 200 years old. So, but I guess what I'm trying to get at, here's another, this is like possibly a photograph of San Francisco. And this, even though it's photographic, it still has, oh, Brian, you saw somebody on the left is funny. Even though this has this is a photograph, this is still atmospheric. So what we read and what I'm trying to get at, you guys, is that when we look at an image and we see space, and not space like, Star Trek, space is in like a three-dimensional place that we might actually go. One of the arguments that I want to make to you is that we are reading the picture. We're not looking at a drawing. There's no natural connection between a bunch of lines or even a bunch of film grain on a piece of photographically sensitive paper. There's no direct connection between those pictures and those lines and the marks that we see and the truth. Okay. This is I don't have my notes up, but let's see if I can. Sorry for the bird, guys. She's just been on all day long. I have the artists, and I'll put this up for you. But this is an early isometric piece. Give me a sec, guys. I'm gonna just pause and share. Give me a sec, guys. I'm going to try to get our feathered friend. It's okay. Oh, okay. So this, can you guys, are we back? Okay. So this piece right here is what is called isometric perspective. Hopefully you guys can hear me, right? Because I did the pause shares. Yeah. Got it. Okay, good. Sorry, I was checking. So this is what's called isometric perspective. And early on, you might think, well, people have always known how to draw. They've always known how to draw space. They've always, the vanishing point and all this kind of thing. But in point of fact, in early on, the ability to represent perspective, or at least a three-dimensional space in a two-dimensional picture plane, is a problem of artists for thousands of years, only with the caveat that they believed that the picture plane was actually, there was a possible direct correlation between what one was seeing on a piece of paper or in a painting and the actual so-called truth of looking out into the world and seeing a space. And that there was a kind of a correspondence between the spaces that one was actually seeing and the picture that one was drawing to represent that space. So there's kind of a conundrum happening early on in Western art, at least. And the question was, how do we represent a world that is infinite to a certain extent spatially, and that never sits still? It's always moving. How do we do that on a piece of paper that's flat, flatter than a pancake? And how do we convince people that what's on the paper is as close a representation to what is real as possible? And that's where this comes in. And I know it gets a little bit fuzzy sometimes, but what I'm talking about is in terms of us reading a picture. So in this case, this is Giotto. And Giotto, this is in the Scriveni Chapel in Padua, in Italy. And he's using, you can see what's common in very early Renaissance, kind of pre-Renaissance paintings, is the use of an atmospheric perspective, or like a perspective where it's kind of a stacked perspective. So the things that are closer are in full view, and the things that are further behind are hidden behind the things in back. But there is no attempt necessarily that is made to adjust the size, since we now presently know that as things, because we live on a a sphere, lines converge because of the fact that we live on a sphere. So here, Giotto is just using the architecture as a kind of a setting. And the setting is more linked to these folks over here, who are the pontiffs, right? And I'm presuming this is Jesus and his disciples. And if I were to use some of my techniques that I have, which is what I did, to try to figure out where the vanishing point was, I realized that there are multiple vanishing points in this picture. So when Giotto painted this, the actual spatial positioning of these people was not as important as indicating or symbolically referencing an architectural structure that in some cases might have been quite modern at the time and quite fancy, and it might have connoted something more about to do with wealth or a location or ideas of officialdom. And one of the issues that people came up against was, this is Albrecht Dürer, how do you represent an object on a picture plane that is what's called foreshortened? So this fella here is, this is like a frame, and it's translucent, and that frame would close. And then here's a lute of some kind. And when he's looking at the lute, you can see that this part right here is here. This long neck, while we're looking at it sideways, is quite long, but in this point of view, it's different. It's very, very short and compressed, but also it looks like it tends to go out in size. And then all these lines here alongside the lute body indicate, much like a cross contour line, that the body of the lute is actually moving out into space. I don't have the artist up in front of me, but this is what's called a color study. And oftentimes this is from probably 1500s, between 15 and 1600s, and or perhaps later. But this is, I believe, in what was then called Netherlands, Holland, and this is a picture of the inside of a large cathedral of some kind, right? You have barrel vaulted ceilings right here and these archways. And so one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention is that once artists in the Renaissance really started to iron out and agree upon a convention, which is what perspective is. It's a pictorial convention. It has nothing to do with truth, although some would say it does. One of the things that they agreed upon was that since we live on a sphere, that there is a vanishing point in any given situation, and that the vanishing point is more or less where all lines converge on the horizon, where we can no longer see over the edge of the earth. Now, close up, what this ends up doing is it puts the horizon line more or less always at the height of our eyesight, so where your eyes are. So if you're walking down the street and you're walking down, say, like a mall or something like that, and you want to know where the vanishing point is, and let's say you were drawing it, more or less what you would do is figure out where's the height of my eye, and the height of your eyes would actually be the point at which the surface of the earth kind of goes around, and that's where your vanishing point is. However, I'm not going to say that the vanishing point is always at eye level, and some teachers do say that. I don't think that is correct, because there are multiple points of view, and the world is not man-made, right? It's supernatural, or it's hypernatural, where it comes from the Big Bang or whatever. So in this case, what artists have done is they've figured out, how do we figure out where the horizon line is in an existing space? So this artist, whomever it is, if you can follow my mouse, this artist lined up all of these pieces of architecture, and you can see how they create this sort of line all the way up. I'll connect to the underside of these pillars, this little lip, and then if I can draw a line straight there, straight there, straight here, there, and it goes all the way down. You can also see that on this side, there are some lines that come down, and they all kind of wind up right around here. Even this line right here is kind of climbing up ever so gently. And as such, what we can figure out is if we presume that the vanishing point in any given photo or picture corresponds with the eye level of that person, and we're familiar with the piece of architecture or the location, we can determine whether or not this person was sitting down, drawing, or standing up. We can determine if we knew more about them, if they were of small stature or tall stature. We could also, by virtue of the light and the shadows that are cast, guess what season it is. And so if we could get a relative date on this and we look at the costuming of the people, we might even go back in time and think, well, what would people wear when it was cold, when it might have been spring, it might have been winter. Probably it was spring or fall in this picture. And it looks like the person was sitting down, right? So if I compare this guy to this, the base of this pillar, I can see that these are quite tall. And probably if this man were up here, he would be about this tall. So these are about waist high, or maybe like shoulder high. And so that lets me know that in fact, this person was probably sitting down drawing this image. And so it's almost like picture forensics. Like you can go back and look at pictures in different museums and kind of tell how the artists did it. This is Henry Fox Talbot. And Henry Fox Talbot was a guy, he wasn't an artist per se, but he did like to travel quite a lot. And this is before cameras. You can actually, I've been looking online, and you can actually buy a camera lucida. And you can do this very thing. And so what this is back before photography, you would go on a trip. Let's say you go out to the countryside, or you'd go to another town somewhere, and all that would really exist are maybe like some photographic postcards or some small paintings or etchings that you might be able to bring back as proof that you were there and show some friends and talk about it over dinner. But Henry Fox Talbot went to places that were not super popular with everybody. Like he liked to go out into the countryside, and he wanted to be able to bring back some pictures to show people. But he wasn't very good at drawing. And so what he did was he created this little mechanism called the camera lucida. And you can see he's got it there leaning up against his face. And what it is it's a prismatic lens that at once, as he looks down through the prismatic lens, the lens does two things. It allows him to see the page, but it also gives a ghost image of what is in front of him directly. And so all he has to do is just trace over the ghost image that's being reflected, the ghost image of reality that's being reflected onto the page, and then he would take it home. And this was sort of what people did, as they still do, tell travel stories. And so this is kind of how this is how the camera lucida works, right? So you would be looking down, say, toward your picture, your paper right here, right? And then the thing you were drawing is out this way, and it hits the mirror, and it reflects up, and it kind of meets in the middle on this prismatic surface. And that prismatic surface, the half silvered, it's kind of like having mirrored sunglasses. So the mirrored sunglasses or mirrored glass would come down here, and then he would be able to copy it onto the paper. There's one there in use. This is the camera obscura. So camera obscura, maybe some of you have seen camera obscuras. There's one in Santa Monica that is like a room that you can go in. It has a pinhole, and it's on the cliffs. It gives you, excuse my yawning, it gives you a panoramic view of the ocean. And what happens is, because there's a little pinhole in one side of this room, the entirety of the panorama of the ocean is projected through this little hole, like a pinhole camera, onto the walls of the room. you're in the middle of a projection, a real world projection. This is just optics of the world outside. And so what they did was they knew that they could do that kind of thing, but they wanted to create a way that they wanted to create a way to use it in the studio, much the way that Albrecht Dürer had been doing before with the gridded screen and looking at the lute. And so now the trick here, though, is that with a camera obscura, this comes in upside down and backwards. And so what the person would do is they would draw the drawing on, they would pretty much have like a translucent piece of vellum or something. And you can see this fellow here is drawing what is being reflected from the outside in this kind of darkened area. And so now let's talk a little bit about the power of vision and about perspective as a well, as an ideological construct. All right. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that if you're an artist and you're using the conventions of perspective in your artwork, what you're doing there is, since you are the only one that can see the types of perspectival, objects that at your height with your eyes, when you paint something, what you are doing is you're painting what they call your cone of vision. And your cone of vision is the very thing that only you can see. So artists began to use this cone of vision and this perspectival system in a way that would prioritize particular ways of seeing a painting over others. So you might go into a museum and see a painting that is like very realistic, very well done, like a Michelangelo or something like that. And you might think, gosh, they have such a good eye, right? But the one thing that they also have is they have that cone of vision. And so what they are showing you is not simply what you're seeing in terms of a subject matter, but they're also showing it to you in a way that they want you to see it. And that's very subtle. So these are some more optical illusions, and this is where we get sort of a play on that expectation. So we've come a long ways where the use of perspective in imagery has become so expected and easily read that there are some artists who can do these kinds of optical illusions and play with our expectations and kind of mess around with what we understand, what we're reading. And this is why I think that perspective is simply a convention of representation and not what is called more or less true than another form of representation. And I point to optical illusions as evidence of the fact that if something were true and this system were kind of irrevocable and perfect, then wouldn't it follow that just so long as all these conventions were followed that it would work? Not exactly. And so you can see how this image here, it looks fine up on top here, and then down below you see this pillar's down there. These are all on the same plane. Are you guys seeing that? Okay, here's a question. So which is the tallest man in the picture? Which is the not tallest, like if we stood them back to back, but who's the biggest guy? Who's the biggest guy? The guy in the hat? Yeah.
The one that's going bald.
Okay. So so this guy's the tallest, and then this guy's second, and this guy's third in terms of size?
No, I mean, like the biggest guy that was going bald
This
is
one.
taller. Yes.
You think he's taller than this guy? Okay. Let me ask you guys this. Which image is taller? This one right here, this guy, or this guy? What do you think?
From perception, the one in the back. I mean, I thought the guy in the hat looked the tallest because he's the closest. And
Yeah,
the further back because he looks the smallest, but that's perception just because he's further out.
right. So that's the atmospheric. But I'm looking, so if you were to take your pencil, I want you guys to do this on your screen. Take a pencil put the bottom of your pencil in the front on the bald guy's head, and then with your fingers, kind of pinch up until your thumb is at the bottom so that your pencil's at the top of the bald guy and your thumb is at his shoes. Hold it there, and then I want you to compare it to the guy in the front. Move your pencil and compare. Now, which one's taller? Or are they about the same?
A little
Same
bit almost the
size.
same.
Yeah, they're the same. And so this is how we read perspective based upon, so size doesn't really matter in terms of perspective because this guy and this guy are the same size. But in our mind, because we are so used to reading spatial cues about distance, height, and size and closeness and far awayness, this guy automatically seems a little bit bigger than this guy, although they're the same, right? Same thing here. Which guy's bigger? You can do that same trick if you want.
The guy in the back looks bigger.
So do that same measurement thing that I showed you before. Put the top of your pencil on the top of his head and put your thumb at the bottom, and then compare the two and tell me.
Oh, the same.
Yeah, they're the same. So again, like perspective is a complicated exercise in representing space. Same thing's going on here, right? Are those lines parallel to each other, or is one bigger and behind? Same idea. If you want, you can use a ruler and lay it across your screen. But does this one look a little bit lower than this one right here? This is a little bit high. Maybe this is higher and this is lower. What do you guys think?
That's so weird. It's the same size.
It's the same size. And not only that, they're parallel and they're on the same plane. One is not bigger, one is not further away. If we took away this grid system, they would just be two of the same size lines in a white picture plane. Fairly predictable. You guys have probably seen something like this, right? I'll skip that one. Okay, so this is more. So you can see how the conventions can work in isolated areas. It's not, in other words, like having a perspectival system within a painting or a drawing doesn't mean that it always follows the same exact version of the rules from one area to the next. More optical illusion. This is sort of the endless stare, a la oh, my brain is not working. Well, I'll move on. This is an artist named Toulouse-Lautrec, and Toulouse-Lautrec was a little person, and he was an artist in France at around like the 1860s to the turn of the century. And the Moulin Rouge, the red, it's called the Red Mill, was a small but mighty little place, and I think part of it is still there. And it was just kind of a cabaret where there were dancers. It was also a place where people drank, and there were prostitutes, and there were just all kinds of strange mix of people. And he would draw. They would just draw their environment. And so one of the cool thing, if you guys go to a Toulouse-Lautrec show, because he was a little person, many of his drawings are done from a very low perspective, or a perspective that you know, people who don't perhaps suffer from, or you know, who have dwarfism, people who are taller would have a different perspective. So it almost always looks like this was drawn with him sitting down. And you can see how close this banister is. So if he were sitting at a table, for example, and we're 6 feet tall, the banister might not be so close and up against the face. In this case, because he had a smaller stature, the banister looks a lot larger. These are done with pastels, color pastels. This might be, these are studies for larger paintings. This is a charcoal drawing, believe it or not, and this is also perspective. It's a system, right? In this case, the vanishing point is going up. So if we were to follow this line up this way, and then we were to follow this line like that, all the way up, the vanishing point would be somewhere up in the sky up here. This is also a charcoal drawing. These are shadows that are cast from the building, very harsh shadows. Aerial view. Okay, so this is sort of the theoretical two-dimensional version of perspective, and I'll do a little demo for you guys on paper after this slideshow. And so, the way I look at perspective is that establishing what you're going to draw or where you're going to draw is the first thing, and then what you'll do is you'll figure out the vanishing point in that scenario. In this case, this is when we're just creating an optical representation of space where we establish a vanishing point, and then we can create like a shape down here, could be the side of a house. We could continue making the rest of the house, fill it in, and then we have something that is perspectively congruent with what the vanishing point dictates. And so you can see this is what's called single point perspective. This is what's called 2-point perspective. Now, in any given day with your own two eyes, you have like a billion-point perspective because there are a million jillion different points of perspective in any given situation. This is aerial perspective. So if I were truly looking at these and I were above it and this were floating in space, it would have a vanishing point that would vanish eventually down here. This is a 3-point perspective. 1, 2, 3. And so this is sort of this is 2-point, this is 2-point, right? And so, and again, the vanishing point is going to be our eye line. We could also extrapolate this onto other things. So this will be helpful for people who are illustrators or who want to create fantastical worlds. You need to understand the perspective of a 3-dimensional planet. So hypothetically, unless you were going into another dimension, it's feasible to believe that if we had some other civilizations on different planets, those planets too would go along with notions of perspective because they are also on a sphere. Okay. So I haven't got the assignment quite finished up yet, and I'll post it right after class. But what I wanted to show you guys was in real life, and these are some photos that I took on campus of the Oceanside campus. What I want to show you is that when you're out in the real world, you can figure out where the vanishing point is, number one, by simply sitting or standing and then looking out into the distance, and you will know that wherever you are standing, wherever your eye level is, if you were to hold up a pencil, you would find the horizon point, the horizon line. So what I want to show you guys here is how to find the horizon line visually in an environment if you want to draw that environment on a piece of paper. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm looking for angles. So I've got an angle here, I've got an angle here. This is the clock tower. Notice how these are all pointing down, right? Okay. This is kind of going straight across, but it is at a slight distance. But I could also use this. This could go up. So let me show you. I'm going to use the clock tower to show you how I can find the horizon line if I'm not exactly sure where it is. So I would at arm's length, I would lay my pencil along the edge of the, and if you guys can see me in the you guys can see me in the window, like, you know how you see artists doing like this when they have their arm out at arm's length. That's what this is. And so I can go like this with my pencil and move it around, and that's what I'm doing here. And as I go forward, I can kind of point it down. I'm gonna go with another one. You'll see that all these lines are kind of terminating in this little area here. And that right there, when I look at it, that is my horizon line. So if I were to draw this picture on, if I were to draw this on my page, I would use the horizon line here to determine composition on the page. So for example, let's say I wanted to draw the clock tower. What I've noticed is that the horizon line is in the lower like quarter of the clock tower, which means that if I wanted to position the clock tower on my page and make sure that I could get all of this, I would try to make sure that the horizon line on my page was lower in the lower 3/4 of the page. So that way I would be able to fit the top of the clock tower into the page, and then this would be much less. But if I started my picture with the horizon line up high, and I'll show you how this looks. Here's another one. This is the library before they redid it. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing using my pencil. See how I'm stabbing it down? See how it's winding up always around the same place? So there we have the horizon line. I find that this is a useful technique to use, especially if you have kind of buildings with oblique angles or multiple compound angles where it's not as easy to see where things are vanishing. And you can say, well, just hold it up to your eye line. Well, yeah, you can hold it up to your eye line, but what if you've got it slightly wrong and so on? So this is just another way of checking. Okay, here's another way of doing it. Coming down that way, up. This is a much more gentle slope you can see. And there it is. There's my horizon line right there. Another thing to look for are cues of perfectly flat lines in the middle in the building, and that'll also show you where you can find the horizon line. So what I'm going to have you guys do, and I'm going to switch up my share here. I wish I could, this is something that I usually do in real life, but what I'm going to have you guys do is do an exercise first. Sheet of paper here. Do this in your sketchbooks. All right. You could do this in your sketchbooks, and it does help to have a ruler for this exercise. Square this up for you guys here. Okay. All right. So when I'm working with perspective, and I'm just going to go ahead and make like a mock page. You don't have to do this. I'm just doing this for the sake of the demonstration. Okay, so let's say this is my paper, right? Now, if I wanted to draw the clock tower, as I did before, and I put my horizon line up here, I would run out of room because there would be the bottom of the tower down here, and then it would go up, 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 and I would run out of room. But so when I'm asking you guys, so what we're going to do first is we're going to do 2 drawings. The first one is going to be due next Monday. The second one will be due the following, Sunday. And then the following one will be due on the following Sunday. And they're going to be 2 drawings. Now I have put up some photos which you'll use to figure out the horizon line. And let me pull up a photo so we can all do it together so you guys can see. All right, so these are going to be among the photos that we have. So let's try and figure out where is the horizon line here. So what I'd like you guys to do is take your pencils or take a ruler, and I'd like you to lay the ruler lining up with the header over this door, the sill of the window. So if I just lay it like right along here, okay, and I bring it down, it comes around there. Here's another one, comes down this way. And where those lines intersect, that's going to be your horizon line. And you can also look at these ones here. So it looks like the horizon line, from my point of view, is right around here. Do you guys see that? I wish I could film it from this point of view and show you. But what I did was I laid a ruler right along this line, and it brought me down, yeah, the top of the stairs, good. So, and it brought me down here, and then I did this one, boop, 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 right? And then I did this one right here, doot, 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 and it winds up right about there. So that's my vanishing point. Now, photographs on the web are one thing because you're going to always have a really particular point of view from a person's perspective, right? And more often than not, people will center their photographs, and it's the more adventurous photographers who will find a different point of view, right? So let's look at this one. This is an interior space. Same logic. So if I were to put a ruler up on my screen and lay it along here, come down, and then I did this, and it came down, and then I did this, and it comes up, and I did this, and it comes from here, up, 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 up. This, it looks like my my vanishing point would be like right around there somewhere. And that's kind of, and you can kind of tell, like some of the visual cues that I'm looking for are like these parallel lines that are parallel with the top and the bottom of the photo. So for example, the window frame. So what you guys are going to do is you're going to work with these pictures. But what I'd like you to do is attempt to draw something in real life, not from these photos. Okay, same thing here. Let's find out where the vanishing point is. So if I were to lay my ruler up on there and I were to draw a line, see, follow my mouse coming up there, right? And then over here, coming up here, okay. Oops, the mouse is not moving very freely that way. Then I could also do from up here, coming on down, very steep line coming down. And then I could also do the tops of these windows right here. Come all the way down here. It almost looks like the vanishing points in the lower kind of third of the drawing right here, or the photograph, right? And so why is this important? It's important because if you're drawing something in three-dimensional, like real-time space, what you're going to do is you're going to use the vanishing point as almost a key to placing an image on your page. So I'm going to switch back, and if what I'll do is I'll throw this photo into here's another one. Maybe I'll do this one. So if I'll throw this one in the chat, and then if you guys want to open it and watch me kind of go about drawing it, then it'll kind of give you the it'll give you the idea. Okay, so I think the photo, I've put it in chat. Hopefully you guys can find it. I'm going to switch my my share to my drawing. Oops. Okay, hold on. I know I've turned it off. I just wanted to kind of warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and figure out where the vanishing point is on this, and then I'm going to draw it accordingly onto the page. All right, we're back up. Okay. So I have this this image up, and then I'm going to do my new share. Okay. So let's say I'm out in the world and I come across this beautiful pathway in Encinitas. Of course, this is not Encinitas. It's like, I don't know, Italy somewhere. And this doesn't really matter what kind of pencil you use, though what I would like you guys to do is to use your pencils to create some kind of value. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to lay you could do this too. You can lay your ruler or a pencil or something along the edge. And I've noticed that the vanishing point of this image is very likely about, so if I do that, it's about, like, if you guys were to look, I'm going to change my my share so that I can help you guys do this. So if you're looking at this and we take a line and we go up from here all the way up, we start down here, we go all the way up. And while these aren't perfect, they do offer up enough information where I can create these vectors or lines that come down. And it looks like the vanishing point is in the lower third of the drawing or the photograph right about here. Okay. So now flash forward to my drawing page. And what does that tell me? If I have a vanishing point that's in the lower third and I put it up here, the 2/3 that I need to put in is not going to fit. So what I'll do is I'll put my vanishing point right about here. Okay. And I can make a line, a very light line, just to do that. Then what I'm going to do is I'll move in here and I'll start to block in some of the proportions. And so what I'm going to do is I've noticed that the street has this has kind of, I'm looking at it in terms of like 3 different shapes. And I'm going to go back to the photo. I'm going to toggle back and forth. And I've noticed that there's this kind of flat space up here, and it comes down and it comes down. I've noticed that this is more or less in the center of the page, but I'm going to use this as my starting point. And if I were to think about this shape right here, it kind of looks like a pyramid, right? So I'll go back. And now that I have my vanishing point there, I know that the vanishing point is somewhere at the top of the door. Okay. And so if I were to put the door in according to my calculations, right, I would see that the vanishing point kind of runs across into the door right there. So that's going to help me do my first thing. I'm going to place, and I'll do this kind of quickly. I'm going to place that door right there. Okay. And then it's got that kind of like little portico thing going on. Comes up and around, and then it kind of vanishes there. Now that pyramid shape, the reason I did my door first is because I was trying to get that pyramid shape relative to kind of in there. Now the thing is, my paper is much smaller, and so proportionally what I'm going to do is I'm sizing my door because I don't want to draw the whole thing. I just want to draw a small kind of area of the space. And as such, I'm not going to try to fit everything in, but what I'm going to use is I'm going to use this door as my reference point. So remember when we were drawing with the fabric, we were using the parts of our fabric, our sketches, to establish the relative placement of things and also the relative size of things. Now in this case, I'm doing a vertical picture of a horizontal view. And so in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use elements in my drawing to figure out how far away things are. So for example, I'm going to go back to the photo. And one of the things that I can do is I can remember how we held up our pencil on the screen where you can put the top of a pencil here and then use your fingers to get the distance. So I've done that, and I've got this kind of distance on the, if you guys can see my picture, I've got that distance. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that distance to see how far away that planter is. And let me switch up really quick so that I can try to make this make sense. Okay, so I have the door here, and what I did was I established the distance there because I thought, okay, so what I've done is I figured out that the vanishing point is right here, and there's my vanishing point. And I realized that a lot of the interest of the image is in the top 2/3 of the photograph. Now, I've gone ahead and I've established that my vanishing point cuts more or less across the top of that door. So the door is going to be my go-to kind of thing. And what I'm doing is I'm going to measure this door here, and I'm going to use that measurement there, kind of like this. And when I did it on the page, it looked like the planter that's off to the right was about one door's distance from the edge there. And that gives me the line of where I can now put my the edge of my my planter box. And then there's some flowers that go in there. Then there's a piece, then there's the part of the architecture that comes up there. And if I were to do the same thing with my box, and I do the same thing on my photo on the screen, it looks like the box and the edge of the building is about one box distant here. Okay, these are equal. And then I can start to shoot in the bottom part of my building there. And I can just keep doing that. And so as I keep doing that, I can also start laying my pencil across the page like this on the screen. And I can ask, okay, I'm going to shoot back and kind of give you guys show you a new thing. So now what I want to know is I want to know where to put the top of this balcony on my drawing. So if I were to lay my pencil horizontally across from the top of the door, I would more or less eyeball. What I could do is I could say, okay, well, where does the top of the door stop? So let's say it stops right at the top of this plant. Okay, and I'll zoom in. Well, I'm afraid to zoom in because I'm kind of playing around with my thing here, but let's see. So if I cut across from the top of the door, it's about the top of the plant. Now my question is, how far from the top of the plant, notice I'm using my elements, from here to here relative to, say, the height of the door. So if I measure the door, right, and I put the top of my pencil at the top of the door, my thumb at the bottom of the door, and then I know that this area right here is where I more or less created that horizontal line. Now I can measure up this way. And when I put the door's length up there, it looks like I've got about 2/3 of the height of the door. And here's what that looks like in real time when you're drawing. Okay, so I took the door, I pinched it there, and then I know that if I just cut straight across, here's where that little plant was that's kind of poking out. What I figured out was that kind of the balcony part started about 2/3 of the way from the top. So this is the distance right there of, if I took the door and I put it there, that's where it is, but it was about 2/3. So 1, 2, and that right there, this 2/3 line, okay. Well, there's that. Oops, sorry. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So this line right here. So what I did was I took that kind of coordinate on my drawing, And then what I did was I used my pencil and I put my fingers here on my drawing. And then I moved from across, there's that coordinate, and I put my thumb there. Then I realized that it was about 2/3 of the way up, and that's where this line is right here. And all that is by way of allowing me to figure out where to begin to draw the part of that building that that those outrigger joists are coming. Okay. And I can use my eraser to kind of clean up some of my lines. And then I can also get an idea of the angle of all of those different, right? All these different things come up like this. So there's one here, there's one there. Looks like there's some coming out here. Looks like there's a missing one. And then looks like we've got some like that, right? And so on. And so these get slightly bigger. Okay. And there's the edge of the other part of that apartment building that comes up. Okay. And again, you can do all the different types of measurements. So I could say, well, how tall is the top of the building relative to the bottom of the building? And it looks like it's about the same size. So if I feel confident that I've got this part correct, I can go like this and like this, and that's going to be the top of that second story. And it looks like there's kind of a window shade kind of propping out there. Coming down, it looks like a kind of like a transom shade goes up. It looks like we've got another one kind of coming in like this. Looks like some kind of a pipe of some kind. And this kind of comes up. And after a while, you can kind of get a feel for the for which way the lines are going to go. You could also do kind of like that sketch kind of technique that I showed you guys. Okay. And then this has like a kind of an angled wood here, there, and it looks like it's got some kind of okay, this looks like it's got okay. All right, and then we've got all these kinds of interesting lines coming through here. And it looks like there's another something going on there. I can't really tell. It's very foreshortened. It almost looks like a pipe of some kind. And then just down. And then what I've noticed is that these roof lines come in right at the top of my that one kind of transom slide. And there is ever so slight an angle, right, on that roof that comes up. And then out and up. And it looks like there's a kind of a bit of an overhang like this. And then we start in with these joists that are kind of coming up like that. And as they get further and further away, they become closer and closer. And then same thing here. I'm just looking for this little edge there. And there's these kind of big joists. And again, I'm being kind of quick here, guys, just to give you an idea. Okay. Now, and then once they get that kind of blocked in, I can go back in and start playing around with some of my shadow, getting some of that intensity of the shadow in there. Some really beautiful little shadows on these joists here. There's my door. I'm going to come back down here. The nice thing is when you're doing this, you can kind of jump around. You don't have to like just go from one point A to point B. You can kind of just draw to your heart's content wherever you feel like you want to go, right? And so now drawing that outside edge, that thing comes around, and this is that kind of forgot what it would be, kind of like a would be a bit like just trying to oops, show chat. If you guys are in, I can't, for some reason I can't see my chat, so if you guys are anyways, I'll just keep trying for you guys. Okay. And you know, these old buildings, at times they just, I always have a tendency to make the tops of things like this a little bit too pointy, so bring it down. We've got this, there's not a whole lot of shadow in there, but there are those windows. And then there's some plants in the way here. That's okay. And then it's got that kind of nice edge. There's a lot of kind of beautiful detail in there, and I can clean this up too with my eraser as I go. It's kind of hard to see, but you guys can approximate, right? Okay, now, so there's the edge of that thing right there. It looks like I have a little bit of a, it almost looks like there's like this very, very abrupt kind of edge here that comes out, and can give that little sidewalk area some love. Now I could get really detailed on the road if I wanted. Here's some of those pots. I could also just do a line of the pots that come down. They kind of come at this kind of an angle. Now, when it comes to this other building, I could draw. I'm trying to figure out this other building that's up here. I'm trying to figure out where do I place it? Where is it relative to the edge of the door? So if I were to take this edge of my door and on my photograph and put my pencil on, and I lay it on there, I would notice that that the other building right there kind of is around, I don't know, maybe like a quarter of an inch away. But the other thing too is I have to figure out where's the bottom edge of that building. And if I were to lay it horizontally across, it shows me that the bottom of the building is somewhere like right around here. Okay, and so if I were to just draw like a little quick reference line there, quick reference line here, now I have more or less a relative location for me to put that other building. And I'll just go ahead and kind of shoot that in. And so then I want to figure out, okay, where's the top of that building? When I looked at the top of the building ended about here. And so maybe like right about there. So what I'm doing is I'm using parts of my drawing as reference areas for me to better position the portions of the drawing of the thing I want to draw. And then I can also use my pencil to put it on the photograph, and I can get a relative idea of an angle where it comes to the top of that roof. Also, the bottom of this thing, it looks, I mean, just like old kind of medieval, you know, building, and also the changing the vanishing point. So I've got this kind of strange line that kind of almost looks like it's horizontal, but it's not. And then this is going to be kind of like the top wall that kind of comes in, and then the roof kind of comes over like this, and it more or less matches that. And then we've got, and then it gets more complex because at about so what I can do is there's a whole nother roof line coming in right around here somewhere, which I'd like to get in there. The first thing I want to do is establish this. And with my mind's eye, I can more or less bisect this when I'm trying to figure out where those shutters are going to be. And it looks like one of the shutters, it looks like they're about, looks like it's like 1/3 up. So the bottom of the shutters are kind of like this. They're a little bit wonky because they're old. And so the shutter comes up like that. And then like this, down. There we go. And now I can kind of shoot in some of these shadows here. So you guys see where I am with the shutters. Okay. And then here's the other shutter over there. And again, old shutters, they're wonky. They don't sit perfectly straight on the, oops, looks like I messed up my camera there. Okay. No, there's really not really a need to use a ruler. But if it makes you feel safe, you can use a ruler, but I tend to feel like the ruler robs the drawing of some of its kind of natural quirkiness that might end up, showing up in your drawing. So this comes like this. Mhm. And now it does look like there's some kind of a thing going on here. And then of course there's that nice dark shadow. Sorry, I'm arranging windows on my screen so that I can. If you guys are messaging me, let me know with your voice because I don't. I've lost my. There's my chat. Okay, cool, got it. Okay. And so here's this, and then I've got these other shutters are kind of coming in. So I'm gonna. And then also there's this really foreshortened version of the interior of this house, right, coming in. And then I've got just a sliver of that wall there. This comes up and kind of straight across and down. And then we've got, and I realize that some of this stuff isn't really making visual sense. Like if I were to draw it from memory, I'd probably make some very different choices about what we were looking at. And then this is where that other, so now what I've got is I've got a reference point for the other, those other tops, which kind of come like this. Looks like there's one that comes down here. Okay, no problem, Brian. All right. And then this guy kind of comes up like that. Now it looks like there's all kinds of texture on this building here. Kind of has a kind of a strange kind of a thing where, old buildings, what's kind of cool about them is they're never perfectly straight, It looks like this part right here has to be a bit further down, so I can adjust that. Now, when it comes to the pots also have this kind of linear organization. So, and they do get smaller in the background. So as I put the pots in here, and I can, they're going to get slightly bigger as they come back. toward me. And it looks like there's a little porch right here. Somebody's little porch stop. So we've got another little pot right here, a little green pot. Little pot front there, some plants. So this is something you'll just want to take your time on. It's not, it doesn't, not a big hurry. You know, do your best, do what you can do. So you can see how I've kind of overall started to try to get the look and feel of this building in there. I've also got like a chimney that's coming up. Looks like I've got that too high. Yeah, it's got that much too high. So there we go. And looks like I've got a chimney that's kind of popping like this a little bit. Coming down, down. And then of course I've got all these different, like all these little tiles, which you can just kind of approximate if you guys want. I've noticed that the roof line comes to here, it ends about there. So, okay. And we've got like a line there. So this would be all my different. I'm just being very quick about it, right? Just to kind of show you guys what we're up to. Looks like we've got a little bit of got some flashing there or something. Looks like there's a overhang there. And then we've got this beautiful little peak, kind of beautiful little peak. And these are the kind of thing that makes it so beautiful, little details like this. Multiplicity of different architectural details kind of in the background. So we have another little chimney in the back there, ever so small. And then this guy's got a little thing going like that. These are all, of course, leaves. And so on. So I'm gonna probably leave it there. Now when it comes to this, the kind of drain, it does have a kind of a turn to it, and it's literally just like this really small kind of a line that kind of comes, and then I guess it kind of turns and has a little bit of a wander to it. And then this is where things can get smaller, big, small. Okay. And then of course I've got these windows up here, which will give this building some kind of you know, presence. It's got a little bit of a shadow coming down here. Got some, okay, one that goes there, and there's one across. Kind of starts, looks like it kind of starts like right there, up, over. Maybe that's a little bit too big. But again, if you guys aren't sure, you can use your own drawing as a reference point for these other elements. So the thing is, once you start, you've already started creating a situation where you can find your way around the drawing because you've put in all these different elements, and you know that if you're kind of being true to those elements, that you can rely on those elements to teach you about what else you're looking at in your drawing. And so on. So, and then of course I can go back in here and I can begin to shade in these bits and pieces and make it look more kind of like a real space. So that's kind of how to go about doing it. Looking at the horizon line, using the horizon line as a placement option for where you're going to put the rest of your drawing. You're going to do two drawings. You're going to do one that's outside and one that's inside. And right after class ends, I'm going to post the assignment for you guys with the resources. But I would really like, pardon me, I would really like you guys to possibly use real life as a reference instead of relying on the photos here for your drawing. And because I feel like these tools, I know that these tools work the same for flat drawings as they do for real life drawings. Looks like I also forgot to do this little kind of looks like a fan, like some kind of event fan of some kind. Right? And there's that kind of wire that comes across. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to leave it there, and hopefully that will help you guys get going on your perspective drawings. And then what I'd like to do is, if we have time, I'd like to we could do an interior draw along on Wednesday, and I can kind of go over with you guys how to locate the vanishing points on interior shots and that kind of thing. Okay, any questions, you guys? All right. So I'm going to sign off on this one, and then I'll get the assignment up for you guys and get it ready to go. Okay. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday. All right. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.